out here the first weekend in the new year at the end of the first full week. You can see I plowed the garden over there and behind here and back here. And the tractor's sitting over there to my right. This is the old strawberry patch from about 4 or 5 years ago. We let it be overgrown and just kind of plowed around it for a couple years. Didn't mess with it, just didn't have the gumption. But anyhow, I've pulled all of the soaker hoses out of there. This is a shed here, a little shop I've got. Got our Comparant 79 Z28 parked there and some grapevines growing there on the side of it. But this area here is where I've got planned to put my artichokes that we're going to try to grow this year. I've already pulled all the old soaker hoses out, and you can see there's old plastic in here. I've got to get in here, manually pull all this plastic out of here, and then I can plow this in. This right here is last year's garden. It's a raised hill process where I use my harrows to plow up. I've got a special cultivator rack, and I'll show you that in another week, in another video later in the garden season when I make the new hills. But the cultivator rack pulls the dirt up into a hill, puts a V in it where I can lay the drip tape in, and then I cover it with a material. In the past I've been using a regular plastic material, and then there's this spun material here. It's kind of a fabric, a plastic fabric. But it's a lot of work to put it in and then pull it back out, which is what I have to do. I got to go in here and pull all this plastic out, and you can see the hay in between the rows. I actually plan on using a biodegradable black plastic material. It's made out of carbohydrate-based plastic. It's black, so it'll capture the heat and heat the soil so we can plant earlier than anybody else. It'll still be a raised hill method with a drip tape in it, so I can control the water and the food that nutrients that go to the plants. But more importantly, I won't have to spend all of this labor like I'm going to do today for the next couple of hours pulling all of this out of here. This black plastic polymer material will actually break down just like this has. You can see where it's all ripping and tearing. I can come here and I'll try to pull it out. It doesn't want to come in one piece. It wants to rip off in pieces. It's gotten brittle. But I can't plow this into the garden. This is petroleum-based plastic. This fabric does the same thing. You can see this is a woven fabric type material, but it's the same thing. It's all brittle. It doesn't want to pull out as one piece. It wants to pull out in chunks. So it's going to be labor intensive. And there's Maggie there, all excited about me being in the garden. But at any rate, it's going to be labor intensive to pull this out. The stuff I'm going to use is a carbohydrate based material. It's a polymer made from food starch, food oils, mostly corn. And when I put it down next spring, I'll pull the drip tape and soaker hoses out and then take my harrows and plow that stuff right in with the hay. It'll biodegrade right into the soil, and it's got nutrients in it which add back to the soil, and I won't have to save you a lot of labor. We're also going to be doing some straw bale gardening for our smaller seed things like carrots and radishes and stuff like that, and we're going to do a little bit of that this season too. So I'm going to stop this video here, and I'm going to get on about pulling all this plastic out of here so I can jump on the old Kubota right there and plow the rest of this garden in to get it ready for spring. You can see here I've got my drip tapes and soaker hoses and my little, I call them my octopuses. They're little 4- and 5-way water valves that I use to hook up all of these drip tapes. Now I have two things here. I've got some soaker hose stuff here. This is a regular round product. It's a porous rubber hose. I believe it's made out of recycled tires. You can buy them at all of the garden stores and Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, Walmart, wherever you shop in the garden section. I've used these in the past. They can get kind of pricey. They're, up to $7, $10 for a 100-foot or a 75-foot roll. And they only last a few seasons because they tend to dry rot. They get brittle, and when you bend them like this, they want to break and snap and crack and leak. And after they're 3 or 4 years old, I don't use them anyway because they spring leaks in the middle of the season and wash out your hill, and it's a pain in the neck to keep up with. I've started buying this material, which is called drip tape. You can see it actually lays flat. Comes on a spool. You cut it off with a carpet knife, and then you bend it over a couple of times and slide this little end on it to put an end on it. And that closes off the end so you can cut it to length. And then at the other end, I'll walk down here. They've even got a little splice right here if you need to splice two pieces together, or if you accidentally nick one with your carpet knife planting a plant, you can put a splice in it. But at the business end of these, there's a simple little twist connect that goes on. You literally twist this right here and slide this hose up in there and then twist it back to the left, and it locks it in and puts a regular garden hose end on it so you can screw it onto your garden hose. And that's called drip tape. It has emitters every so many inches. You buy it according to what you want. You can buy it according to the size of the emitter, the number of gallons per hour you want it to put out, and the spacing between the emitters, 4 inches, 6 inches, 12 inches, whatever. This is a 6-inch emitter. And the other thing that has come out of the garden that we've gotten all cleaned up, my wife did this, is cattle panel. And the cattle panel comes in really big lengths. You can see right here, this one is about a 6.5, 7 foot length. It comes in 12-foot lengths. And you can see the spacing here on one of these is about as big as your hand. Okay? It's a pretty good size wire. These things are galvanized and they're darn near indestructible. They'll last you a lifetime. You can cut them down to 4-foot lengths or 3-foot lengths or whatever length is good for you. I've got them cut into 6-foot lengths. I'll show you how we use these later this season, but they're inexpensive too. They run 15 to 20 bucks per 12-foot section. You can go to Tractor Supply or many other commercial garden centers. Sell these, and I recommend you carry a pair of bolt cutters with you, because you can pick them up in your pickup truck, and because they're 12 feet long, they're too long to put in the bed of your truck. You can cut them in half to haul them home, and then cut them down into smaller sections depending on how you want to use them and the size of your yard and garden. I'll show you how to use those, and how we put those to work as tomato cages and trellises to grow peas and beans and things of that nature on. Works better than string and baling wire, and they're very convenient. They're easy to clean up and stack away in the fall and then use again, and like I said, it's a lifetime investment. You buy them once, they last for a lifetime. Okay, now you can see to the right of the tractor we've already got a little pile of black plastic from last season growing there as I pull out of the garden. And you can see these rows are about, this garden's about 75, 78 feet wide. And you can see these go a little past 50 feet. That's about maybe a 55, 60 foot section there. And you can see it's a raised hill. I'll put my foot down here by it, and you can see it's about, oh, I don't know, that's right at about 2 feet wide at the top. And I've got a cultivator rack that makes these hills. It also puts a V, a divot, right down the center of the row so we can lay our drip tape in the spring. And it puts a little V in the soil on both sides for me to lay the cover on. And then you could either use a cultivator rack. I just use a rake and get out here and pull a little dirt back along as I go and cover the plastic up. And then you tuck the ends in, make a little divot, put some dirt over the end to hold in place, put you a slit and pull your hose out. And then you can put hay, which you can see is still doing quite well. It's quite thick, this hay. And it's composting down too, so we'll be able to just plow this right in. You can see it's composting nicely, but it makes a nice, clean, dry surface to walk on in between the rows, keeps the weeds from coming up, and gives you a carefree garden and extends your harvest. Both allows you to plant earlier because the black plastic heats the soil, and the hay in between the rows holds the moisture and the heat in. So what you end up doing is heating this whole area prematurely to where you can plant anywhere from a few weeks to a month earlier than you might otherwise be able to successfully grow things without the nighttime temperatures of frost killing them. Anyway, I got to pull the rest of the plastic out of here. And as I said, this is the last year of using this petroleum-based plastic. I found a provider online, and I'll give you that information a little later, that you can buy rolls whatever width you want, you know, 2 feet wide, 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet wide, by hundreds of feet long on a roll, and it is a biodegradable carbohydrate-based polymer, which means you put it on the hill, it does everything this petroleum-based material does, but at the end of the year, it breaks down and it goes right back into the soil. It also has a fertilizer in it, which will actually add nutrients to the soil as it breaks down and when you plow it back in. So it totally does everything you want from the black petroleum-based plastic without the negative side effects, and more importantly, without the trash pile that I have to put in a can for the trash man to come get. So I'm going to get back to work and manually pull the rest of this out of here, and this will be the last season I'll be doing this. Also, you'll notice, before you pull this stuff up out of here, I've still got these plants. These are pepper plants from last year. Interesting thing, the plant is dead from here up. Completely dead. The frost and cold have killed it. But the roots are very much alive. Now, I suspect that if I left this plant might try to sprout back up from the roots in the spring. Obviously, I can't grow in the same spot every year, and I can't let these winter over because of insects and diseases that set up from the previous year. But it is interesting to note that this black plastic has kept this soil so warm at night that below the dirt line, this plant is still very much alive. This is either a jalapeno or a bell pepper plant. I can't tell which at this point, but it is actually still alive. Those roots are still supple and green and growing. So that's what the black plastic does for you on the raised hills. Alrighty, more to come. Okay, here we are. After the first weekend in the month, we pulled out last year's garden and the old strawberry patch from a couple of years ago and plowed the whole garden. There it all is. And the strawberry patch up front, the newer patch, we're going to leave that overgrown to protect it from the cold until a little later in the spring. Then we will weed that out, transplant the runners, and have us plenty of strawberries this summer. In our next episode, this coming weekend, we'll start working on ordering seeds and taking inventory of what we've got and planning out the strategy for next year's garden. One last thing on plowing the garden in, there's a traditional viewpoint that if you plow the garden in literally hours before a hard freeze, it'll greatly reduce the number of insects in the garden from the previous year, because you're turning over the soil and bringing some of those grubs and eggs and other insects to the top. Now, I don't know how much truth there is in it, but I indeed did plow the garden today because it's supposed to go down to an uncharacteristic 16 degrees tonight here in southeast Georgia. If there's any truth to that, then some of these bugs will die tonight before they have a chance to burrow back in.